Hi, fifth graders. It's Mrs. Williams here to talk about the Carolinas. The history of the Carolinas. Carolus is Latin for Charles. The land that became the colonies of North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia was once part of a single colony called Carolina. North and South Carolina were established as separate colonies in 1712, while Georgia, the last southern colony to be settled, was established in 1733. Most of the settlements were located in Virginia because it was the first southern colony. So we have the area from here all the way around here. This used to be called the Carolinas. And most people settled in the first colony, Virginia. That's where most of the settlements were. King Charles II, we have him in the picture here. The southern colonies of Virginia and Maryland proceeded to grow during the 1600s. In 1663, King Charles II, the son of King Charles I, granted land for another colony located between Virginia and Spanish Florida. The charter divided the colony known as Carolina among 8 English nobles, also called Lords Proprietors. The Lords Proprietors set up a government for the colony. They chose a Virginian, William Drummond, to be the governor. In 1669, the Lords Proprietors wrote a constitution or plan of government for the colony. It was called the Fundamental Constitution of Carolina. The plan allowed the colonists to make some laws, but most of the authority was in the hands of the King of England. They had success in raising cattle and trapping animals for fur. Once they found the correct way of growing and harvesting rice, they began to prosper. As the population grew, Carolina became more difficult to govern. In 1712, the northern 2/3 was divided into 2 colonies, North Carolina and South Carolina. North Carolina was hilly and continued to develop as a colony of small farms. South Carolina, however, had the flat coastal plain and created larger and larger plantations. The main cash crop on many of the South Carolina's plantations was rice. On drier land where rice would not grow, they would grow indigo plants. These plants created a blue dye. The dye was used to dye cloth and used in clothing. The cloth-making process was common in the 1700s. South Carolina has 3 main regions: the hilly Piedmont that goes through most of northwestern South Carolina. A small northwest corner of the state is called the Blue Ridge region, after the Blue Ridge mountain range. The lowland Atlantic coastal plain covers the southeast 2/3 of the state. Following their division, North Carolina and South Carolina developed differently. North Carolina was cut off from the sea trade and continued to develop as a small farms colony. South Carolina had close ties to Europe and produced rice and indigo for a world market and developed large plantations. So we had Lords Proprietors, like the Maryland colony. The Carolina colony had been awarded to a single official. Whenever a colony was not developed, then it was granted a royal charter by the English government. The person awarded the land was called a Lords Proprietor. The Indigo Plant, Elizabeth, Eliza for short, Lucas Pinckney took over the family plantation in 1785 and managed it for the next 35 years. Her contributions were so significant that when she died in 1793, President George Washington was a pallbearer at her funeral. Indigo was used to dye the blue coats that the American soldiers wore during the American Revolution. Today, a synthetic dye is used instead of a natural dye. So your assignment is to write an essay. Your writing assignment: why did the colony of Carolina split into North and South Carolina? Write a paragraph explaining why the colony split and how the 2 areas differ. Send your essay in a Google document to Mrs. Williams. Thanks a lot. Have a great day. Bye-bye.